The courthouse pulsed with a kind of energy usually reserved for verdicts that echo across decades. There wasn't an empty seat in the chamber. Veterans sat in pressed uniforms, their chests a mosaic of service ribbons. Parents with folded arms leaned forward, unsure whether they were witnessing justice or watching it being questioned. A few teens in hoodies slouched in the back row, some scrolling, some staring, but all aware they were part of something bigger than a routine hearing. Outside, the noise was louder. Protesters held handmade signs and American flags. Some shouted slogans. Others stood silently, hands over hearts. Reporters buzzed like static around a live wire. The whole town of East Fairmount, Missouri, seemed to teeter on the brink of something irreversible. At the defense table sat a man in a plain charcoal gray shirt. No decorations, no medals, the sleeves rolled neatly to the elbow and a posture that still hinted at discipline. This was former Staff Sergeant Daniel Keane, 41 years old. 3 combat tours. Bronze Star with valor. A man who'd once saved his entire unit by running into an ambush alone to draw fire away. Today, he was not being honored. He was being prosecuted, not for any battlefield act, but for a speech. For minutes of calm words delivered at a school board meeting. The board had proposed altering morning routines at public schools, removing the Pledge of Allegiance in favor of a more inclusive daily affirmation. Keane, a father, veteran, and lifelong Missouri resident, had spoken up. He'd talked about sacrifice, about remembering the fallen, about unity over erasure. But no one shared the full speech. Only 14 seconds made it onto the internet. One line. If the flag offends you more than the enemy ever did, you've forgotten whose soil you stand on. The clip, stripped of its context, ignited a firestorm. 3 days later, a group of students, none of whom had attended the board meeting, burned a foreign flag behind school gym. A fight broke out in the cafeteria. A student was hospitalized. Local and national media swarmed in. The school board panicked. Accusations flew. And when they looked for a scapegoat, they found one in Daniel Keane. The charge, inciting social division through public rhetoric. A civil suit had been filed. A criminal investigation loomed. Keane stood to lose his pension, his VA benefits, and possibly his freedom. The trial wasn't just about his words, it was about the ripple effect of those words. Whether intention mattered anymore in a world ruled by optics and outrage. Presiding was Judge Miriam Caldwell. Known for her composure and rigorous interpretation of the law, she'd handled high-profile corruption cases, medical malpractice suits, even a scandal involving the governor's nephew. Her nickname around the circuit was the Ledger because with her, the facts either balanced or they didn't. She scanned the courtroom, her gaze pausing momentarily on Keane before returning to the stack of files before her. "The prosecution may begin," she said, voice clipped and cool. The assistant district attorney stood, a young woman named Elise Grant. Ambitious, polished, her arguments sharp as a scalpel. She replayed the viral clip. The 14 seconds. The courtroom sat stone still as Keane's voice echoed from speakers, calm and clear. "If the flag offends you more than the enemy ever did, you've forgotten whose soil you stand on." Grant let the silence stretch, then turned to the jury. "These are not just words. They are coded endorsements. Inflammatory, loaded, dangerous." But it wasn't long before others spoke. A teacher, Margaret Voss, stood from the gallery. "I was there," she said. "He never raised his voice. He talked about remembrance, about his friend who died carrying a flag in his chest pocket." Another voice followed. A student, awkward and young. "He didn't say anything hateful. He said freedom is something you honor." The judge maintained order, but something was shifting. Not a reversal. Not yet. But a crack in the neat narrative that had brought Keane here. Then came a name that changed everything. "Mr. Lucas Bennett, please approach the stand." Keane's breath caught. He turned. Lucas Bennett had served beside him in the 117th Infantry. Afghanistan, Fallujah, Ramadi, the kind of places that erased birthdays and rewrote identities. Lucas had been the one Keane carried across a minefield after an IED ripped through their convoy. They hadn't spoken in years. Now Lucas walked to the stand with a visible limp and eyes too old for his face. "I owe my life to Daniel Keane," he began, voice low but unwavering. "But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because the way his words were twisted is a disgrace." He looked straight at the jury. He talked about remembrance. Not violence, not hate, but memory. You don't get to erase someone's sacrifice just because it's uncomfortable. The courtroom exhaled, like it had been holding breath all morning. Then came another moment no one saw coming. A boy, 14, asked to testify. He was escorted in by a woman in civilian clothes. His name, Elijah Langston. The name hit Keane like a flashbang. Langston, Corporal Henry Langston, the kid for Bravo Company, the one who joked about opening a bar called the Mess Hall, the one who died in Keane's arms on a Tuesday morning that smelled of blood and diesel fuel. His son now stood in the courtroom. "I was at the school board meeting," Elijah said. "Sergeant Keane gave me a peppermint before it started. Said, no falling asleep during democracy." The courtroom laughed just slightly. He told the board we should remember soldiers, not silence them. That changing the pledge was okay, but forgetting sacrifice wasn't. He looked down, then back up, steady. Then I saw the video online. It wasn't what he said. It was shorter, meaner. "That's not what I heard." The judge stared. Everyone did. "Why did you come here today, Elijah?" she asked. "Because no one asked me what I heard. Just what the video said." He looked toward Keane. "He talked about people like my dad. And then people blamed him for something he didn't say. But I remember." Keane sat still, one hand over his chest, right where a folded letter from Langston Sr. still rested. A letter he'd kept through 3 deployments and a lifetime of guilt. Judge Caldwell leaned back. "This court rescinds the formal directive requesting an apology from the defendant." Gasps. She continued, "This ruling does not constitute agreement with Mr. Keane's original phrasing, but it does reaffirm that speech, when protected, cannot be selectively condemned based on convenience." The courtroom didn't cheer. It didn't clap, but it stood. One by one, veterans rose. A woman in the back Rogold star pin on her lapel stood. A teacher followed. A reporter. A janitor. No quiz. No commands. Just something primal in collective conscience. Then the door opened again, and in walked a man in full military dress blues. General Roland Harlan, Keane's old commanding officer. He didn't speak, didn't approach the bench, just stood in the center of the courtroom, faced Keane, and offered a single, sharp salute. No words, no ceremony, just truth. Keane returned the gesture. Outside the courthouse, the wind picked up. Flags fluttered. Protest signs wavered. Somewhere in the crowd, a child placed a small stone at the base of the steps painted red, white, and blue. Keane exited quietly. A reporter asked, "Do you regret your words?" He paused, turned. "I'd rather be punished for loving this country too loudly than rewarded for pretending I don't." And that was the headline. But it was never just about headlines. It was about a country asking what it means to remember. And who gets to decide when truth becomes too inconvenient to hear?